Hello and welcome back. This is our second podcast. As I said last week, I am Mark. This is my associate Steve. We are two dudes who happen to live in Brazil, which is a paradise, and we look at the world through alternative eyes. So, without further ado, over to my associate Stephen.
Hi people, so back again. I was having a quick look at the newspapers, online newspapers from the UK, and it seems that the news, the mainstream media is concentrating on Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby on a Good Morning Britain about them arguing behind the scenes, and each one of them hiring lawyers for some reason. Not sure why. And also a lady in the British Parliament who was complaining about immigration, a Conservative lady complaining about immigration, and it strikes me that the Conservative Party have been complaining about immigration basically since Brexit, but have done very little about it. Rishi Sunak went to speak with the European courts, complaining about the European courts, when really 10 years ago, all he needed to do was to remove the UK from the European courts, and then he wouldn't be under their spell any further. But still, he hasn't learned that lesson, and so the immigrants are still coming across. I noticed on the news, televised news, that they stopped calling them illegal immigrants and calling them people coming across on small boats, which is to soften the language a little bit, But even so, that seems to be, for the British people, the main problem. However, as you'll hear a little bit later, you'll find out that my opinion is that the problem for the British people is a lot more worldwide than what you think, if you think it's just about the immigration. So if you want to, Mark, if you want to take the
yes.
Take the wheel a little bit.
Well, okay. Well, obviously the Holly and Schofield, Holly Willoughby and Schofield thing is quite interesting. I remember Phil Schofield when he was presenting the links between children's programs many years ago, and they put it about that he actually quite liked a young lady who happened to present another program, but evidently his tastes may have changed somewhat since then. Yeah, this okay, two colleagues having a bit of a tiff with each other. It's a distraction. I don't know that much about it. I see it come up, I must admit. I see the headlines. I can't be bothered to read it. I mean, we've all had colleagues.
It's hardly groundbreaking news, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were good friends. I thought they were inseparable, but there's got to be something behind it. I mean, there's a comedian from years ago called Jim Davidson. I just have to catch what he said, and he doesn't exactly have a good opinion of Mr. Schofield. But these are all celebrities. They're all in a different bubble from the rest of us, and they forget that sometimes. They're there because of popularity, and hey, a bit of scandal doesn't hurt anyone. No good. No, no such thing as bad publicity. So they're in the headlines again. They'll kiss and make up at some point, or do something to make up. So yeah, big public announcement then. Big public press conference for all friends again. Yeah, moving on.
We should do.
Yeah, I'll leave the conversation there on that one. Yeah, getting on to other things. Yes,
right. So let me give you the latest. First of all, I made a mistake in the last podcast. I said to you that my source of information about the Ukraine was from a guy called Alexander Mayorkis. His name isn't Mayorkis, it's Mercouris,
Okay.
the Greek guy. And it doesn't take away anything that he says. He's normally, it makes complete sense and really, really balanced. And when he makes a mistake, like me, he admits he's made the mistake, and he on the next program that he records, he explains why he made the mistake and what the actual facts are.
Well, I'll put his name down below later, so that if people want to investigate him and decide for themselves.
He's got a YouTube channel. It's well worth watching.
Yeah.
About an hour long each program.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Ukraine, and I was on about the last time that the UK has been promising missiles.
Mm.
Well, Rishi Sunak has gone one step ahead, and he's trying to convince other countries to send the Ukrainians F-16 fighter jets. I don't know if this will materialize, because the UK is not saying that they will send fighter jets. They're saying that they will find fighter jets, which usually means that if some third party gives them their fighter jets, then the UK might give the third party other jets. Basically, it's to get rid of all the scrap. You know, just get rid of all the scrap metal.
Well,
on the American side of this battle between Ukraine and Russia, I stated that the reason why the US $110 billion so far been sent to Ukraine, why were they sending that so much money, which to me has been extremely extravagant, extremely generous, especially when the UK economy is in the state that it's in. Why would they send so much money? Why would they invest so much into a country that isn't a major player in the world? And initially I thought it was because the people in Ukraine have information about, if not Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the son of the president of the United States. But this week I was listening to a senator from the US called Lindsey Graham, and on his part, he frankly, he said, we can't let Russia win this battle, because that will show the rest of the world that we are weak, and that will show China that we are weak. Because parallel to the Ukrainian problem, in the near to Taiwan, the China are wanting to take back Taiwan as being part of China, and the US are trying to stop China from doing this. And if Russia wins in Ukraine, that will be another signal to China that the US is losing its grip on the world. This began from when the US decided to do that withdrawal from Afghanistan. You know, and the images of the Afghanis clinging onto the aeroplanes and falling off as they were taken off. And the terrorist bomb that killed 13 American US soldiers and countless other people, civilians as well. And that showed the world that the US was totally unprepared for military action. And also the US military are starting to use drag artists to try and recruit new sailors. I think it was the Navy.
Oh yeah, go for a stereotype, yes.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly I'm not sure that red-blooded male people who want to go abroad and kill people are really wanting to be dancing as Daniel LaRue used to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to defend it. I mean, maybe there is scope well, there is. I mean, for gay people to serve.
Oh no, there are gay people serving.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
when your main advertising
mm,
is aimed at cross dressers,
yeah, that's a bit.
that
Yeah,
you know, you're limiting your scope a little bit. You know, it's a little bit like I don't know if this has reached the UK, this
mm,
information, but Budweiser
mm,
have a beer called Bud Light,
yeah. It
and
has reached there. Yeah, yeah.
they used they used this guy called Mulvaney,
Yeah.
who's a recently, I say recently, like the last 10 years, I suppose. Although he claimed it's his first anniversary of being a woman, and
Yeah.
used him as being a spokesperson, celebrated his womanhood.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's not done any surgery just yet. You know, but I mean, basically that's only aimed at certain types of people,
Mm.
and the people who were offended by that have stopped buying Bud Light, and therefore the sales of Bud Light have gone down around 25%.
Well, it wasn't so much the way I understand it that somebody was getting involved in the advertising. And good luck to the guy. He got paid money to do it. Any of us would quite happily do that if somebody paid us some money, probably. I don't think I've run around in women's sports gear and dance up and down a garden, but you know, good luck to him. I've got nothing against him personally. It's the whole premise, but I think it's the whole thing of the marketing manager or officer or director. She has said, I want to get away from the frat boy image, obviously the fraternities in the US. I mean, Bud Light's a pretty horrible beer anyway. It's cheap and cheerful, so but it sells like mad. You know, you go and buy a crate of it and you drink lots of it. A bit like us with Brazilian beer, probably. Um, it's a, and I think that was the big problem. It was attacking their core market. Isn't I don't see any harm in expanding markets. They missed an opportunity there. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone, from what I can tell, was upset necessarily about the fact that they got this guy to do it. It's the fact that this guy, or it's the whole marketing idea, or we don't want frat boys drinking our beer anymore, when they're probably the biggest market, or blue collar workers even, who probably identify a little bit as frat boys, but frat boys are university grads. But this is what it's all about. None of us really care, to be quite honest. I mean, we know there's products in Brazil by the company, the mother company or the father company, parent company, but we don't care. You know, in Brazil, probably if you've got somebody advertising beer like that, nobody would really care. We'll think it would laugh it off. I mean, we all know there's certain beer adverts who use women or a lot more, which is again another story that's come out of the US. It's the Miller Lite brand, who have now their advertising thing is women used to brew beer. Oh, good, you know, nothing against that. It's the way that they're marketing it, and then they want to collect up all historical adverts from the probably 70s, 80s, 90s of women wearing bikinis advertising the beer. If you actually look at these, yes, they would get attention. Women drink Miller's Lite as well. We never affected them. I mean, I think Megyn Kelly, she did a segment on one of her podcasts, one of her shows, all about it. It was laughing. And they even showed an advert from the 80s, which was actually more denigrating to men than it was to women, showing how shallow men are.
Sure.
And we could identify as that, you know, with that, because we know we are. And again, it's the frat boy image, but we identify as that. That doesn't mean we're not intelligent. What's the point in having a drink? What do you have a drink for? To relax. We all know there's certain ways you should behave in any state, and we know that when we get older as well. But yeah, this collecting of old things, that's almost a little bit in line with what book burning to me. We don't like what happened in the past. We don't like this publication. Therefore, we're going to eradicate it. Okay. From this point on, don't have bikini-clad women advertising your product. Fair enough. So you have grown as a company. Do it that way. I think in both cases, this is my understanding. What has actually happened is some marketing director has probably done something a little bit above their pay grade, because none of this has actually gone out as official. Neither of these adverts actually went out officially. They went out on Instagram or they went out on a YouTube channel. Not necessarily.
They were pulled as soon as they saw the reaction.
I don't know. I mean, that's what's been going about. Was it approved or wasn't it? It disappeared quite quickly.
No, I said they were pulled. They were pulled.
Yeah,
they were pulled. Once immediately they saw the reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I said at the top, no such thing as bad. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
As bad publicity, but maybe in this case, my point has been proved incorrect. I mean, there's people in the world now about Bud Light and Miller Lite that they don't want to drink it, or or maybe it is a marketing ploy in the longer term. They'll start putting on the shelves, and everybody will start drinking it other places. Yeah, I mean, again,
I have to confess. I have to confess, if they started selling a Bud Light at 10 cents a can, I'd buy a lot of it.
Of course we would. Of course not to.
But I wouldn't tell anyone.
Yeah. Are you listening, Bud Light? Brazil, good market for you. Nobody knows about what happened until now. But yes. Until now. Right. Yeah. And Miller Lite the same. We'll drink your stuff. Yes.
So coming back to the expense of the Ukraine conflict, I think the US needs to understand that nothing lasts forever, and being a world leader, there's only one way you can go, which is down. When you're at the top, you can't go up the top any further. You're at the top, so the only place you can move is to go back down again. Yeah, well, and the US needs to instead of spending all this money, $110 billion, they could have spent it on infrastructure. Yeah. And just prepared themselves for when the dollar is taken away as being the world currency. Which brings me down to the world economy. There are many countries now that are between themselves and are doing trade without using the US dollar. But will this be a permanent fixture? I don't think so, because there are other countries that are still using the US dollar. Will the banking systems need to be changed? So at the moment, the world has what's called a SWIFT system, which is an acronym of a company, Society of Worldwide Internet Bank Financial Telecommunications, where each bank has a code, and any international transaction goes via the SWIFT program. So if half the world is not using the SWIFT and half the world is, what happens when the part that is needs to communicate with those that aren't? You know, what happens? And if these transactions between the two go through without a flaw, then you need to ask yourself, what was the point of the SWIFT in the first place? Yeah. You know? And I think that, and also, what do you use as a central reference? Because at the moment, the countries that are not using the US dollar are still using the US dollar as a reference point. Yeah. You know, how do you price the value of one currency against another? And it's what the exchange is on the world stage. What the exchange rate is. But all exchange rates go through the dollar. You know, and they don't go from one currency to another because there's nothing to measure them by. Some countries are buying gold,
Mm.
But once again, what would be the value of gold? Because gold's normally valued using the US dollar per ounce, you know. And if you want to know the value of gold in a currency, you find out how much the gold is worth in the dollars, and you do your calculations, and you find out that it's worth so much in this case in Brazil, the real.
Yeah.
You know, how many reais does it cost to buy an ounce of gold?
Mm.
You know, and so there's going to be I don't see, or that I think from straight away people need to think about how this transition is going to happen, how it's going to take place.
Yeah.
And the United States need to use its energy that it still has instead of trying to fight against losing the dollar as a world currency. They need to think about how they're going to manage when it isn't, and take the necessary measurements so that it becomes a soft landing and not a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, I remember some years ago I read an article in The Economist publications, and it's talking about the last time this happened. This is about probably 6-8 years ago. About the last time this actually happened on a global scale. There's been empires before, but the biggest, most influential empire the world has ever known was the British Empire. All the rights and wrongs of it. Obviously, that's another discussion for some time. But the last time it happened is when the British Empire was coming down and the US one, or the US as a country, the US doesn't really have an empire, was going up. Fortunately, despite having one major war with each other and a few near misses, admittedly, in the intervening years, the turn of the last century, it was kind of accepted this was happening, and they were both on reasonably friendly terms. I mean, I don't know if we still have the special relationship or not, again, still with the US. We can argue about that, if it exists in the way it did. I suspect not. But that's not to say, I mean, the Americans as a whole do like the British. If you go there as people, but how influential they are. I think there's an acceptance. I mean, obviously, now the next transition theoretically will be between the US and China, pending something spectacularly going wrong in the next 15, 20 years. Yeah, I mean, China is building its economy, but we all know, you and I have discussed this, that there's probably internal problems within China, the Chinese economy.
There is, but China has also been buying out other countries on what they call the One Belt, One Road program, where they want, it stems from the old Silk Road, where they had a passage of goods to be sold, and they go down this imaginary road, you know, and sell all the goods.
Yes.
And so what China's been doing is been saying, right, we're going to do the same thing, but we'll also, but to allow this to happen, we'll invest in other countries. And so they build infrastructure in all the countries that are coming down, all the way from China, all the way down through the Asia part, and then coming down to Northern Europe and all these places.
Yeah.
And China has been investing and bettering and look, of course, the governments that are receiving this aid, if you like, or this investment, have welcomed it with open arms. You know, and these basically are the governments that are more aligned with China, as is Brazil,
Yeah.
You know, and so we see things that are happening in different countries that are very similar.
Yes.
And you can see if they're with China or against China. You know, but some similar things that have been happening. For one, I think this thing about the climate, using alternative energy, are governments that are, or parts of governments
Yeah.
that are in bed with China, because it's China that's going to be manufacturing. China will be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world,
Yes, absolutely. You see that.
right? And it's people will be buying from China. The
Yes.
US used to be a powerhouse of the world until recently, but the US changed from being a manufacturing base to being a commercial base, or rather purchasing. And so the market of the US is immense. And when you're buying with dollar, and the dollar is a reserve currency, you know, the US can help out a lot of countries that supply the US, which is why the US in the past has done some really bad things, but nobody's dared to speak against the US.
Yes.
Because they'd receive sanctions and won't be able to sell their products to the US anymore. And so, but I see the world's changing a little bit, you know, because people are starting to turn to Asia for these sort of things.
Yes. Well, we know that. Yeah. That's where the high tech is. I recently had I know somebody recently.
But sure, China internally does have a lot of problems, economic problems, especially in the housing.
Yeah.
Especially in the construction industry. Yeah.
Yeah, which, well, you and I both know is a barometer of things are not quite right with the economies from living in the UK or coming from the UK. Yes, it's a. I mean, I know somebody recently went to Japan, and the technology that's across there, and when, like you say, the chips made in Taiwan. Although America are playing boxing clever there, from what I understand, they're actually moving the production or trying to clone or copy the production to move it to the US. Whether or not they'll get that done, I mean, there could be all sorts of other issues doing that, but it's possibly what they will do, at least in the short term, to stop a chip shortage happening. With regards to defense of Taiwan, I believe they're doing what's called a porcupine thing with Taiwan, i.e. it's going to have so many missiles and everything else on it, and loads of, well, obviously there's probably subs around there that, you know, nobody knows about at the moment. I mean, it is a very, very tense thing. I mean, yes, Ukraine is all about who's got the bigger ability to defend. I mean, I think Donald Trump was on CNN the other day saying some interesting things, whether you like Trump or not, but he said he just liked people to stop killing each other in Russia. No winners. People stop killing each other, which I kind of agree with, which would be the ideal solution. Yeah, with Taiwan, yeah, I believe it's going to be probably one of the most heavily defended places in the earth, probably even more heavily defended than the Falkland Islands is at the moment. Bad thing to say here, I know. But it's is it a flashpoint or not? I mean, if the US can get the technology out, but then that's bad news for the Taiwanese, because we don't need them anymore. Yeah.
When we talk about who's protecting Taiwan and why, this isn't for the common man. This isn't for the likes of you and I. This is for the political class.
Yes.
Because if China decided to integrate Taiwan again back into China, the only people that would suffer would be the Taiwanese heads of state.
Yeah.
Because they'd be unemployed, basically.
Yeah. That's it.
What China could do is say, look, Taiwan is part of China, which they already do.
Yeah, well, certainly,
yeah. You can be our supervisors, if you like. You know, it's just that you don't have any power. You don't have any decision-making power. You just make sure that what is happening in Taiwan is what we say should happen in Taiwan.
Yeah. A bit like Hong
Kong.
Know?
Yeah, Hong Kong, Singapore.
Yeah.
Singapore, although it's independent, it has a humongous influence from China.
Yes.
You know? And it's really healthy. Singapore a bit rigid in they still do floggings, for example. You know, still use the birch.
Yeah.
But in terms of infrastructure, in terms of quality of life, it's still really nice to live there. It's expensive, but it's nice to live there. I used to live there when I was a little tiny tot.
Yeah.
Spent some time there. My dad was in the army, and we went there for a while. Back in the 60s.
Yes.
And even then it was a joy to live in.
Oh, you're a bit of an army brat, were you?
And I think very much so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to start my underpants when I was a kid.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my clock is telling me we're running out of time here. So, anything else you'd like to say just to wrap up, Steve? Anything?
How much time do we have?
3.5 minutes.
It's not enough time. So next time, I promise you.
Yeah.
Because somebody asked, one of the feedback comments, a question was asked, you know, what's it like living in Brazil? What are the pitfalls? What are the bonuses of living in Brazil? In our next chat, we should concentrate on that. I'm not being employed from the Brazilian Tourist Board.
Yeah.
But I'll open up what the good points are, what the bad points are, and I don't know why more people aren't doing it. Coming from the developed world, the hard currency world, hard currency countries, and not coming to the. Or it could be that they are, and I just don't know about it. You know, but not even Brazil, but you go to Thailand, you go to the Philippines, and you go to Africa. In some countries in Africa, you won't find it's not all that much different than the UK. The culture's different.
Yeah, well, that's it. You live abroad. We quite enjoy living. We do enjoy living in Brazil a lot because because we've got the weather, and I took a walk by the Atlantic this morning, or this morning. It's very nice, most agreeable, along nice beaches. Not I'm a beach person really, but it's just nice to do it and paddle in or just have a walk along with the.
It's nice to know. It's nice, Mark. It's nice to know that it's there.
Yes, yeah. I try and go at least twice a week personally. Just go for a walk and a run, and use the exercise facilities that the local authority have spent my tax money installing for me.
I go for a run once a week on the beach.
Yeah.
And once a week in a football field. I train with some supporters.
Okay.
Which you wouldn't believe if you saw the size of my tummy. That's something else.
Yeah, we do it. Well, you get a certain age, it doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to get rid of the tire around your waist. No. But okay. Well,
wrap up.
Yeah, we'll wrap up now. Been good talking to you again, Steve. I mean, obviously.
Likewise.
And I hope people who are listening in enjoy what we do. Again, if you've got any comments about anything you say, if you agree or disagree with us, we're not sensitive. Please just put your comments down. Yes, you might have an alternative view. Okay. Anyway, so hopefully see you all again next week. Okay. Bye.
Bye from me too.